All right, it's Wednesday midweek, and we're looking at the global news. The global news, we always start first with the markets, and it's just a few hours before the opening bell for Wall Street. But Asian markets were closed for Tuesday, and they were mostly in the red. For the European market, it's a bloody red, and this is all no thanks to the impact of yesterday's announcement by the United Arab Emirates that they will be exiting the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, OPEC. That's OPEC Plus. So that's news has already caused a lot of distortion in the markets. Markets are in the red. But our focus now would be on the war on Wall Street, where what you call the Super Wednesday, where the big tech, what you call the Magnificent Seven, the likes of Microsoft, Alphabet, Meta, Amazon, Apple, as well as Apple will be releasing its earnings tomorrow. But for the four, we'll be expecting that those four, which I just mentioned, Microsoft, Alphabet, Meta, and Google, will be releasing their first quarter earnings results. And at the same time, the U.S. Federal Reserve is expected to announce the outcome of its two-day policy rate decision meeting today, which the market has already priced that in, that the rates will be unchanged at a range of 3.50 and 3.7%. So, and it will also be the current U.S. Federal Reserve's Chairman Jerome Powell's last monetary policy decision before he hands over or passes the baton on to the incoming U.S. Federal Reserve's chairman, that'll be sometime in the month of May. That should be announced on May the 15th. But for an overview of Tuesday's trading session on Wall Street, let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Mara Bird.
U.S. stock market saw a major dip on Tuesday after record highs on Monday, as many doubts around the OpenAI and the tech stocks, and also the United Arab Emirates announcing that it would be leaving OPEC of the oil producers. This has caused major concerns for many investors, as we saw the Dow Jones slip just below a flat line, the S&P 500 fell at 0.5%, and the heavy tech Nasdaq led the day down at 0.9%. Many investors are wondering what this will mean for the coming days and weeks ahead.
Correspondent Mara Bird giving us an overview of Tuesday's trading session on Wall Street. Okay, so from the United States, we head over to the UK. Well, we see that the UK's exports to the Middle East, we've been talking about that Iran-US conflict or war, as you may call it. So far, the impact has affected the UK's economy. According to the British Chambers of Commerce, BCC confirmed a sharp 20% contraction in the UK's trade activity with the Middle East. That fell by about 20%, and this is coming as the regional conflict involving Iran enters a third month. And so far, at the same time, the number of UK businesses is in a critical financial distress. So that financial distress has jumped by more than a third amid fresh pressure still linked with the conflict in the Middle East. So that conflict at the same time has also forced a downward revision of the UK's 2026 growth target. So out of the UK, we head back into the United States, where US President Donald Trump is in the news again, as he has blocked two permitted US wind energy projects from development this week. And he's also saying that he would pay millions of dollars in refund to companies behind those wind projects if those funds are reinvested in gas. He's already calling the wind project as a waste and worthless and also a loser. So that's coming from US President Donald Trump on US energy, wind energy right there. And from there, we also talk about Google, which has reportedly signed a classified artificial intelligence deal with the U.S. Pentagon. That's the military arm of the U.S. And that Google is also becoming the latest Silicon Valley firm to sign an agreement with U.S. military despite widespread employee. And it's also joining a growing list of Silicon Valley firms such as Meta and Elon Musk's X, which also have deals to supply AI models for classified use by the Pentagon. And from there, we move over to Australia, which has reported a lower than expected first quarter inflation, that the country's inflation dropped to 4.1%, and that is actually lower than the expected 4.2%, which was expected by analysts. So at the same time, market analysts are describing this as a better than the worst case scenario result, which of course is not too good, but what can they do? They just have to manage with that lower than expected result. So at the same time, the Australian dollar weakened to about 86% on the back of that news, while the industries, market analysts are saying that the underlying price risk is keeping the country's inflation pressure on the U.S. Reserve, on the Australian Reserve Bank's plan to hike interest rates for the month of May. And from there, let's talk about company news, where we see Airtel, as the parent company of Airtel around Africa and outside. Bharti Airtel is planning to list its mobile money unit, what we call Airtel Money, in about a $2 billion IPO on the London Stock Exchange. And this listing is viewed as a massive win for the LSE at a time when the London markets have struggled to attract major fintech IPOs, which have frequently drifted towards New York. So now, according to Airtel, it is seeking to raise about $1.5 to $2.2 billion with a target valuation of up to $10 billion, which would rank it among the largest European IPOs in recent years. And from Airtel, we move over to GSK and AstraZeneca, both of them UK or what you call British. AstraZeneca is British, Swedish owned, while GSK is actually British owned. So both of them have reported better than expected profits. For GSK, it reported a 7% rise in its net profit, which stands at $1.7 billion, significantly outpacing analyst consensus. Now, the company's focus on high-margin specialty drugs helped to offset the decline in general medicines. And at the same time, for AstraZeneca, it reported a strong 2025 financial result, with net profit rising 45% to $10.2 billion, driven by sales of cancer drugs and expansion in key markets. So that's it for Global News for Wednesday. We look forward for Thursday's Global News.